Our guest today is the Chief Technology Officer for the City of Chicago. He has served in this position for almost 2.5 years. Mayor Rahm Emanuel gave him these marching orders, and I quote, "Leverage technology to ensure that the City of Chicago delivers better services at lower cost to taxpayers." Before joining the City of Chicago, our guest today worked for IBM. He earned 2 master's degrees, one in information design and technology from Georgia Tech, and one in English literature from Washington University. Our guest today lives in Chicago with his fabulous wife, Robin. Let's give her a round of applause, Robin. And their 3 beautiful children, Nathan, Andrew, and Charlotte. Ladies and gentlemen, John Tolva. John? All right. Have fun up here.
I will. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Thank you also to my father, who's here, who didn't get a special shout out. Thanks, Dad. Woo! Actually, this was on your seat. You should come see Lydia. She's going to be great. She's the CIO for the county. I do want to call out my colleague, Brian Bannon, who's the Commissioner of Libraries back there. Much of what I'm going to talk about today is in collaboration with Brian. So thanks for having me. It's been about 18 months, and there's been a lot going on. Mayor Emanuel's initiatives have hit full stride. If any of you were here last time to hear about that, or the former CIO, Brett Goldstein, told you a little bit more. The other person that you should just know about is relatively new is Brenna Berman. She was a colleague of mine at IBM. She's the new CIO of the city, and she's fantastic. It's somebody that we should hear from at some point. So we're announcing today the mayor's tech plan, the first technology action plan. I'm going to walk through that. It's news in some way. There's new elements to this and some sort of context for stuff that's been going on. The plan itself is in print. It's also online, and it starts with this quote that I want to read because I love it. Big shot town, small shot town, jet-propelled, old-fashioned town. Sounds familiar, right? By old world hands with new world tools built into a place whose heartbeat carries farther than its shout. That's us. But it's from, a long time ago. That's Nelson Algren in 1951. That opens this tech plan because it's time for the shout to catch up with the heartbeat. It's time for us to actually tell the world what's been going on here. And that's the Chicago Tech Plan. So I'm going to walk you through that today. There's 5 strategy areas. I'm not going to, actually, they told me my colleague Rosie's talk yesterday was the longest city club on record. I will not be matching that feat, I promise. I'll keep it nice and short. And I do want you to check the plan out. I'm just going to pick a couple of these, but there's 5 strategies, each of which have 28, or there's 28 initiatives across the 5. You can also slice it by impact area. So let me tell you about some of these. You've got 2 foundational strategies. Everything else is built upon this. So this is establishing next generation infrastructure. This is about broadband connectivity, wireless connectivity, low cost connectivity. Nothing really matters. Nothing can be built upon that without this. I'm going to give you an update on the mayor's challenge for broadband. The other piece, equally as important, it doesn't matter if you've got a good connection, a fast connection, if you don't know why it's important to have. So a demonstration program that we ran for a number of years with federal funding through the Smart Chicago Collaborative, LISC, and MacArthur called Smart Communities has come to an end. And so now what I'm going to tell you about is how we've scaled that and what we're doing about that to make sure that digital literacy, which is really a more insidious digital divide in some ways than digital connectivity, is addressed straight on. These 2 things form the foundation for really interesting stuff. This is the open, if you were here last time or if you've kept an eye on the news, you know that Mayor Emanuel and open data is a very big deal to him. It enables analysis and optimization of business processes and makes government more efficient. This is built on top of those foundations. The other piece here, and there's some of my colleagues from outside city government here that practice what we call civic innovation. Maybe it needs a new name. It's a form of civic engagement that didn't exist 5 years ago. And some of my colleagues are here in the room, building on top of this platform of data to make the city better. All those CTA, train tracker, and bus tracker apps, there is no official CTA app. What they did is they built a platform, and others in the community built upon it. That's the nugget of civic innovation. I'm going to tell you how we're supporting that. And the last one, which many of you guys and gals are involved in, is what can the mayor's office do to sort of encourage the tech sector growth here? It's absolutely exploding. Half of what we do is just get the hell out of the way, but half of it is actually doing things to attract companies here, to retain companies, and really to promote a culture of entrepreneurialism. So you might ask, I don't know if you can read, yeah, you can read that. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? This is the most text-heavy presentation I've ever get, but that's what happens when you publish a 100-page report. Basically, all of those, I'll leave this for you to read, but all of those initiatives have specific outcomes that we're aiming at for the city. We're not publishing data just because it's fun to do or gets good press, because it costs money to publish that data. And if that doesn't offset the efficiencies that we're gaining or the businesses that build themselves upon it, then it's not worth it. So you can have a look at that yourself. So there's these 5 initiative areas, but there's also 7 sort of outcomes. So if you don't actually care about next generation infrastructure, for instance, or civic innovation, but you only really care about what does this mean to STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, you can slice through it that way. Obviously, only in the online version. You can't press a hashtag in a book. But what you'll see in some of the initiatives that I've pulled out here is I've included those hashtags to let you know that this falls into the savings bucket. That's why we're doing it, or the services bucket. That's why we're doing it. So we don't build from nothing. We build from something, which is strength. And I don't know if you've thought about it this way, but we really have a leg up. Lots of cities call me, mid-sized cities, suburbs, and say, how is the mayor pulling this off? And it actually goes back to stuff, the foundation, the core, many of whom is in the room. We have a really deep coalition of organizations and talent. I mean, I mentioned some of them. You've got the CEC, you've got Smart Chicago Collaborative, you've got iBio. These things form like a dense, almost safety net that allows us to take risks, to take initiatives that you really couldn't do if you didn't have this sort of social stitching together. Obviously, our intellectual and research capital here is unparalleled with the universities that we have here. And this is why Mayor Emanuel went down to University of Illinois about 1.5 years ago with CEOs and talked to 6,000 students and said, you need to know what's going on in Chicago. I mean, part of this is a sort of rebranding effort, right? To get people to know what we have going on here. Sometimes Chicago gets dinged for this, or that we don't have a marquee industry, but actually, no industry is like more than 11% of the landscape. That's actually a good thing for an entrepreneur, right? Because you probably will fail in your startup idea, or you'll have to switch it and aim at some other customer base. Given the diversity of what we have here, that's a very good thing. It's a very rich ecosystem. My colleagues at ComEd will love this. I mean, we have geographical advantages. The post-Hurricane Sandy world has been interesting for us, right? We don't have the natural disasters, typically, that the coasts do. We've got very low electrical rates. The winter actually is a very good thing here for data centers that generate so much heat. And you know what? We play that up because there aren't that many chances to play up a Chicago winter. But we do have geographical advantage, obviously a logistics hub, and that's a good thing. And then the civic innovation. Very few places have what we have, innovating with technology on city data outside of city government. And I'll show you a little bit of that. Okay, so the first one. Establish next generation infrastructure that enables residents and businesses to become more digitally engaged. One of the initiatives in that goal is something you've probably heard about. The mayor calls it the Broadband Challenge. So open gigabit speed networks in commercial zones. Okay, so you may have heard of Google Fiber. This is a project in Kansas City and Provo and Austin. They pick cities of that sort of ilk, and it's not commercial, it's residential. But it's really sort of stirred the pot. In terms of what's available. What the mayor would like, I mean, he actually said it much more simply than this. He said, I want Chicago to be the sole South Korea of North America, meaning the sort of connectivity options for businesses. He sees this not as a thing for residences, but it's an incentive for businesses to start. Right? This type of connectivity, of course, is available in the loop and areas. It's just cost prohibitive for our smaller and medium-sized businesses. So what he wants to do is build this pipe that builds upon city assets, perhaps some city spend, and basically treat broadband like we treat roads, which is everybody owns it or nobody owns it, but it's an open platform to build businesses on. ISPs, internet service providers, can compete on this sort of open highway. So you can see, you probably can't read, but access and jobs, for instance, characterize this particular thing. So building a new Chicago, which is something that Commissioner Klein is leading, also has a broadband component, and it's no less infrastructural or tangible than repaving the streets and relining the sewers. It's thought of in the same way in the mayor's mind. There's lots to capitalize on here. We are the largest transit point of internet data in the nation, which is largely because of our legacy of being a rail hub in the 19th century. So thank you, rail tycoons of yore, because those fiber optic lines run over our rail lines. So that's good for us. It's good for the data center market, and we intend to capitalize on that. So here's just some of the, what's taken a long time, just very frankly, is cataloging and inventorying all the things that we as a city and sister agencies, CTA, have. And we're almost done with that. And that becomes what we put on the table to prospective providers of this new network. Here's what we call the innovation zones. They are the commercial areas. So like I said, this isn't the whole city. It's areas like River North, like West Loop, like Fulton Market that either have a critical mass of digital companies or have all the sort of indicators from a transit and a public space and just a livability perspective that say this will be the next River North. Or so you've got Pilsen on here, you've got Ravenswood. And we're using the model of where's the highest demand in these areas. Typically, it's universities. So we also sort of have put rings around the universities saying, the demand's going to be there. How do we use this to leverage business sort of away from the core there? So here's, whoops, let me go back. Ooh, divvy. This is another initiative, and they're somewhat related, enabling a digital public way and implementing policies and infrastructure to allow for urban experimentation. So, I've talked a lot about data and building sort of things to interconnect with our websites. The next frontier there is the actual built environment, the physical world. I mean, between the CTA signs, the parking meters, the big belly solar compactors, and actually Divvy, which you don't think of this as a technology, right? But you know what? That's generating a ton of data. Every minute of every day, it's a platform. Every time that thing slams back in the dock, it's a node on the network. So when you leave here, I would encourage you to go outside and just, because this is what I do, walk down the sidewalk and think, how many of these things in the public way are actually on the internet? How many of these things are network endpoints? They're not tied together right now, but companies do come at us from time to time and say, we'd like to experiment with a new form of wireless, or we'd like to see if we can get this object to talk to this object. Like the Divvy bike corrals talk to the bus shelters. This is the next front. That's where apps will be built upon. And we want to put together the policies that allow companies and individuals and entrepreneurs to build on that just like they build on the data portal. So, make every community a smart community by ensuring the full participation of Chicago's residents. This stuff is cool, and the Trib called this morning and said, okay, fine, we'll read through the 100 pages, but just tell us what's new. Tell us what's new about this. And there's a lot that's not. I said, you got to read the whole thing and call me back. She didn't, so I pointed her to this. I'm really proud of this. This is an initiative with WBC, the World Business Chicago, and LISC, and the library. We've had a couple years now of smart community initiatives. So this is sort of community centers that are teaching the classes, that have public computing centers, that are really the nodes. And it's just funny, even 4 years ago, these things were revolutionary. Now, with the demographic changes in broadband use, the creation of the Smart Chicago Collaborative that runs these things everywhere, now we have this wealth of information on how to do it again. So we are benchmarking the smart community, putting together a list of, what worked and what didn't, because not everything works in these things, such that a toolkit can be put together for any level of organization. So it could be a neighborhood group or a chamber of commerce that wants to be a smart community, all the way up to the state level, right? Here's the toolkit. Here are the best practices that we've learned from the last couple of years on, how to raise the digital literacy of your businesses, on how to, actually how to go out for funds to create broadband. I mean, the expertise that lives in Woodlawn alone for how to wire up your community needs to be spread. And so I'm really excited about this. Now, what's a little easier to grasp is free wireless. This is also part of the infrastructure plans of the mayor. And it is, we don't intend, this is Millennium Park, you probably can't even see it. We've hidden the access point there on the girder, but that's pretty fast. 10 megabits down, I don't know if you get that at home, depending on who you've got. It's very fast. We don't intend people to set up businesses. This is not an economic development. I hope you don't set up a business in Millennium Park. This is about convenience, but it's also, just very honestly, it's about changing the perception of Chicago. Again, it's a brand thing. It is 21st century cities offer these things to their residents, and we're very happy for this. We have a long list of public spaces and parks and beaches. Mike wired up 5 beaches this summer, and we're slowly chipping away at this. One of the problems is the backhaul, which is the wireline connection that you need for wireless. All wireless is wired at some point. Oftentimes don't come close to beaches or parks. I mean, it's just by definition they've avoided them. So it's slow going, but we're making some progress. This is super exciting too, and this is the third prong of the mayor's broadband challenge: increasing options for low-cost broadband. We've done a number of things. So there's no one solution to this, but we've got some great partners and some really kind of innovative programs. So one's called Everyone On. That is, you've probably seen these. It's essentially a wireless access point, a Wi-Fi access point, but its connection is cellular. Verizon makes them. I'm not actually sure who the carrier is behind this one, but it's very similar to a program that Brian Bannon runs out of the libraries, where you can check out a wireless hotspot. Did you know that? From libraries, so it's not a permanent connection. Again, you're not going to start a business on a connection like that, but it is increasing the ways that we can get access to our residents. Now, coincidentally, just yesterday, the mayor and Comcast announced the 3rd year of a program called Internet Essentials. They were very proud, and rightly so, Comcast. They met a challenge of the mayor's last year to double the 7,000 families that are accessing via the low-cost offering here. It's $9.95 a month, and they did that. So 14,000 families in Chicago are now online thanks to this program. The really cool thing, though, is that Comcast's thinking has moved, from just the connection to the training. So something like 13 community partners now, through United Way and Comcast, are teaching courses on how to apply for a job or how to connect with your family. The reasons, the killer apps, if you will, for being connected. That is the real solution to getting online, or to getting people online. Now, a program that Dan O'Neill runs, and the Smart Chicago Collaborative, if you don't know, is part of the Community Trust. The city, MacArthur, and the trust sort of oversee this body that does amazing things in Chicago. One of them is called Connect Chicago. And like I said, a lot of this is about knowing where you can be online. So you might have seen this campaign called We Connect Chicago. Over 250 places. People just don't know that for free online access. I mean, Brian may know this better than I do, but like at any given time in the middle of a day, you go to the computer labs, the public computing labs at a library. Those people are working or looking for jobs. I mean, it's not just sort of screwing around on the internet. This is important to the economy and vitality of Chicago. It's a great program. So this is another one of the initiatives, engage youth in technology, and that's so simple and so obvious as to maybe make you slap your head, but there's some really interesting examples of how we're doing that. This is not just about getting kids online. This is about 10 years from now, 20 years from now. If we're going to be the sole South Korea of North America, if the technology will define industry in Chicago 20 years from now, you got to start at the beginning, which is in schools. And so that's why the city of Chicago, on a model pioneered by IBM and mentioned during the President's State of the Union address, actually, called P-Tech, got 4 other partners, Cisco, Microsoft, Motorola, and Verizon, to join in for 5 high schools paired with city colleges. So it's a 6-year program, and it's all STEM focused: science, technology, engineering, and math. You get out with a diploma, an associate's degree, and you are first in line, not guaranteed a job, but you are first in line for an interview at one of those companies. And that's, so that's just the beginning. That was one of the earliest versions of engaging students in technology. Why does it matter? Tying it to the actual economy. Now this is super cool. This is a project with DePaul and the city to define digital literacy standards. One of the difficult things about digital literacy or technical fluency, or how do you want to call it, is how do you measure, how do you make that a requirement in CPS? How do you actually measure that? You don't have to be a computer programmer. Okay, so what makes you digitally literate? And if you define those metrics, then how do you say you're more literate than you are? DePaul is doing something very interesting with badges, right? You earn badges. If you were a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout, or if you're an avid video gamer, you know about leveling up and earning badges and sharing them on social media and shaming your friends because I've got these badges. It's a very powerful mechanism, shame is. But what's interesting about what DePaul is doing is trying to define these standards such that our educators can know how to craft pathways, not just educators, communities too, craft pathways for achievement for our students. You may have heard of the Summer of Learning. This was the first citywide badging program this summer. So it was all kinds of institutions, museums, parks, nonprofits that had educational programming. So you'd participate in it and get a badge. Many of them were in STEM or STEAM if you add art in there. And what's cool is this data goes in the student's record, right? So that teachers can see the out-of-school learning. This is a first step at quantifying that out-of-school learning. Not that you get school credits for it, but it does help the teacher know how to channel that student going through. Because I got to tell you, that's where we're learning to be digital literate, not in schools. Outside school or STEM literate. So we needed a way to quantify it. So the other thing that sets Chicago apart, I mean, we're doing amazing things in digital, but we're a town of makers of physical things. We always have been. You know, we're probably not going to be shipping girders around or, pouring molten steel anymore, but we still make things and we still do it digitally. The Chicago Public Library installed a maker lab. Did you guys hear about that? It was one of the first in the nation. You can go into this space at Harold Washington with a digital file, a 3D file, and create physical objects. Okay, so think of it as the physical output to a digital making experience. I'm here to tell you that there is, I'm going to show you a version of that coming up, but that could really differentiate Chicago, bringing together our manufacturing legacy with the digital innovation that characterizes so much else. Okay. We're almost there, folks. Leverage data and new technology to ensure efficient, effective, and open government. Just yesterday, I saw that Information Week, it's a publication that people in IT read, named WindyGrid the #1 government innovation in 2013. I'll show you an example of that. But this is using data. Thank you. Okay. We've been doing this since the very beginning, and we're getting very good at it, actually, which is to use data not just to offer up for people to create apps, but to help us analyze and make interventions and change what we do. An example of this would be we are changing the way we approach rodent baiting. Why? Because we have seen in the data leading indicators that tell us that area is going to need to be baited. These are an increase or a spike in the number of calls for high weeds or trash in an abandoned. I mean, this is not rocket science here, but it's quantified in the data, and it helps us rearrange, save money, and get out there sort of proactively. This is WindyGrid. This is what we won the award for, or the kudos anyway. This is situational awareness. Nearly every piece of data in the city of Chicago has a space, a place. Where is it? Whether that is a permit for a business that has a place, or where our trains are, or where our cars are, we know where it is. And this allows us to look at a region and say, what's going on in this region right now? What has gone on in this region right now? This is very useful during NATO, for instance, last year. But you can also pull in other data, right, that's not the cities, but it is public. So what you're looking at here are two different sets of data mapped onto one another. One is 311 calls in the last couple of days with tweets, so things that people talked about publicly around these areas. Why is that important? Because oftentimes people tweet about things that are actually service requests to the city. Did you see that sofa in the middle of the road? What the, at a certain level of density, those things can just kick off service requests themselves. No phone call needed to 311. We're not quite there yet, but this is the platform to get us there. A sort of listening to what the city is telling us and knowing when it's not normal. It's different than it has been. So one of the things that we wanted to do is take this to the predictive level. Not just know where everything is at one point, given point, but say, okay, what does that teach us about the future? And we actually won $1 million from Bloomberg Philanthropies earlier this year to build that platform out called the Smart Data Platform. So we're just ramping that program up now. We're very proud of that with the other winners. Now, this is not the city. Is that animating it? Okay. Who knows what that is? If you have a smartphone, well, you've seen those emoticons or the emoji, little smiley faces. This is a real-time visualization of the usage of those emotion icons via Twitter. Another way to put it is this is the sentiment of people at any given time, right? No, so thank God the heart is number one, so there is love in the world. But praying hands is number 4. We don't do this. This is a visualization that wasn't done by the city. But I bring this up to show you that there are enough indicators publicly in the world to give you a rough sense of sentiment. And we're interested in that, right? We do want to know what people think about, the potholes. We do want to know, well, maybe you don't want to know, but what they think about the trains. And the data is there, right? So we're looking at that more and more. What is the city telling us? Okay, increase and improve city data. This is the only slide that I retained from the last time I was here. Why are we doing this? Why are we publishing all this data? The first is to build trust and continue with that trust, being transparent. We have more data than any city in North America, and we're very proud of that. The other is accountability. We're publishing this, how the city is doing, not just for the advocacy of journalists and the public, but so that we can hold our own workforce accountable. This is obvious. The private sector has known this for years. This analysis that I've been telling you about builds new processes. So really, this is about business process reengineering, which takes it well out of the realm of technology and into organizational dynamics. And then lastly, open data itself builds businesses. There's a whole class of civic applications or urban applications that people don't really think about, but that have made cities easier to use, right? The Ubers of the world, the Airbnbs, these things that capitalize on the density and proximity of a city and then bring sharing economy in. Many of these are built on open data, and we're happy to be part of that foundation. So something that is new, since last we spoke, the mayor issued an executive order. So now there's no getting around it. It is the law of the land inside city departments. Each department has an open data officer and has a timely publication of their vital signs such that it does not violate privacy or federal HIPAA or FERPA or something like that. It goes into that data portal, and there's a report due at the end of the year to the mayor on how all that is going. I mentioned all the data that we have. It all has place. Another item in the plan is using technology to improve communications. This is an incomplete list of all the sort of social media touch points that the city has across all its departments and sister agencies. This is important, and it's actually something to be proud of, because not all cities, in fact, many big cities, some that are bigger than us on the East Coast, don't use social media as a one-way channel, like just to blast out press releases. We don't believe in that. We respond to people that talk to us, and that's how you build trust. This is a little bit nerdy, but this is internal, right? So, government has, for a very long time, been behind, the private sector in looking at its operations as an enterprise, as a holistic operation. There's long been sort of balkanization of departments, and the mayor knew that coming in, and so we've really done a good job of treating technology as writing across all the services. Just because the Department of Public Health and the Department of Transportation do very different things doesn't mean they shouldn't share the same, CRM, right? This is, again, not rocket science, but it's helping us cut costs drastically. Now, another consequence of this is consolidating data centers. I'm not even going to tell you how many data centers we had when we came into office. We're slicing that down, and we're really focusing on innovative tech. One of the reasons we won that award from Information Week is because all of that Windy Grid was built on open source technology, a database called MongoDB. That's, except for some, very few instances, that's the way forward, at least at the City of Chicago, focusing on innovative technology and getting out of businesses that we have no business being in. Running email servers, right? That in the world of cloud, we don't need to do that. All right, last one, promoting civic, actually almost last one, promoting civic innovation by working with technology developers to find creative solutions. So, the app economy is great, having apps, but what we're really excited about is working with people outside of city government to help us solve the really hard problems. Let me give you an example here. So Matt Gee is here. He co-ran Data Science for Social Good this summer, which is a program largely out of the University of Chicago. It's funded by the chairman of Google, Eric Schmidt, who, by the way, could have done this program pretty much anywhere else. He chose to do it here because something interesting is going on here in terms of the number of data scientists and the number of data scientists who are interested in solving problems. So this isn't this is about optimizing and about public safety and really hard problems that there were applications that came out of this, but they were applying advanced analytics to social problems. We want to see more of that, and we're going to see more of that because he's funding it for another year. But that's just to say that this characterizes what's going on in Chicago. Every Tuesday night at 1871, there's something called OpenGov Hack Night. This doesn't exist in other cities, right? It's 50, 60 people, some of whom are developers, but everyone is sort of civic-minded to come together and say, we should figure out how to put something quickly together that can show you where to get a flu shot, because flu season's coming up, right? That kind of sort of give back was unknown in the programmer communities just a couple years ago, and now it's the way that they engage with their city. This is also a recent development, a new center at the University of Chicago called the Urban Center for Computation and Data, where they're really trying to redefine the practices that come together to talk about this. I mean, I don't know if any of you are in urban planning or architecture, but for a very long time, that community did not really mix with technologists and programmers, and there's a lot of reason for them to do that, especially in a world where you can model consequences before you actually dig into the ground and build it. This is also a really interesting frontier. So, support civic hackers. Hacker is a good word in that phrase. So we are the only city, and I like saying that. I've said it like 10 times today. We're the only city right now that has census-tract level energy usage that's public. Okay, so this is gas and electricity. This is incredible data from a city's perspective as we try to design one example would be mitigations for urban heat island effect. If you're trying to figure out where you're going to put your planters and where you're going to design shade and things like that, you need to know the micro climates that exist from block to block. We don't have enough sensors to figure all that out, right? Although the divvies are a good platform, could be. No promises, but we should do that, Gabe. But this kind of data enables us to be smarter about how we do retrofit policy. But again, it's public, and other people can do stuff with it. So I'll end this section just to say that we make very few apps. I mean, like I can count on one hand the number of applications that the city makes public. Mostly what we do, taking a cue from the CTA that really led the way here, is put out the resources for others to do that. Others to do that for a fee. They can make a business off it. They can do it on the side. But the resources like APIs, like documentation, and support. We are a platform for others to build upon. So lastly, you probably heard the most about this because it's truly exciting, the tech sector growth here. That starts with those STEM high schools that I told you about and goes all the way towards how can we be banging the drum with the investment community or with the bioscience community when they come through. It's a continuum. And it's really exciting. So you have to know about 1871. It is a gem of a co-working and incubator space. It is a locus of talent. It's a symbol, and let's not forget that. It is a symbol of rebirth, and it's just exciting and to have. So we want more of that, right? We're working on working with partners to figure out what are the right elements from 1871 that the bioscience community needs. Where you've got a great pipeline coming out of the universities in biotech, and you've got Lake County that's got the biggest biosciences companies in the world. Is there somewhere in between that the city of Chicago can be playing? So we're working through that. And we're looking at the other areas of like advanced manufacturing. How can we replicate this model that 1871 piloted? But the other thing isn't about industry, it's about place. This is called Blue 1647. It's 1647 South Blue Island Avenue. And it is a kind of mini 1871. Only just saying that, I see it's now 4 numbers, but 1647 is its address, in Pilsen, in the neighborhoods, right? That's the other sort of lateral evolution of these co-working spaces, is take the role models and the entrepreneurs and technologists and push them out to the neighborhoods. That's a good thing, and we want to see more of that and support that. Libraries, for instance, are one nexus for doing that. I don't know if you know this, but there's a technology firm in residence at Harold Washington Library, right? So they are trying to build a business. It's called public good software, but they're also required to mentor budding entrepreneurs coming through that library. Mark my words, the libraries are this sort of sleeping giant in the world of sort of nurturing entrepreneurs. So expand the number of successful networks that exist to connect all these different people together. I mentioned the libraries. Roger Martinez is here. He's a member of the mayor's Technology Diversity Council, which, the mayor, very much supports our startup culture, goes to them nearly every day. And let's see, late last year came to me and said, this is not right. The types of people, as much as I love them, that characterize these companies do not represent the diversity that nearly every other industry in Chicago is represented by. How can we change that? So we got together a group of leaders, all outside of government, mostly business owners, technologists, to come up with a list of recommendations. And there is a tag in this in this plan when you see it called diversity. And there are some very specific recommendations for improving diversity in our STEM and our workforce development. The thing is, though, almost all of those recommendations are just good for Chicago as a whole. Very few of them, are specifically targeted at, one ethnic group or another. It's good for raising the tide raises all boats. So getting very close to the end here, folks. Foster a business-friendly environment and promote ways to increase venture capital available to startups. Now, this is largely a function of World Business Chicago's technology committee called Chicago Next. And we're squarely focused on 3 areas. One is web mobile or digital, which is fairly mature. Mostly what we're doing, and this work I have to tell you is being led by the state, the Governor's Innovation Council, is how do we pair up this rich ecosystem of established businesses, potential mentors, potential customers with startups. It's the holy grail, right? Everybody wants to try to figure this out, and we really do have a leg up with the initiatives that the state is leading. How do we make those matches, right? It doesn't have to be, I'm putting in an order for 10,000 widgets. It can be as much as come in to our big company and learn what our problems are. That will help you as you sway through your business models as a startup. That's one big focus, for instance, in the web mobile space. Now, the other space I mentioned, biosciences, characterized by a totally different sort of snapshot. It does have big business. What we don't have is a way of really bridging universities with those big businesses. So we're thinking about a space, as I mentioned, something like 1871, and really trying to get out in front of those big companies out in Lake County and say, how can you have an anchor down here? And then lastly, probably the least developed, but some of the highest opportunity is clean tech. So think about the kinds of stuff that ComEd is doing in this space. Or maybe you don't know, but Argonne is the national leader in energy storage. How do we take those opportunities, those new technologies, and build a digital business? I mean, I love this almost the most in the sense that it is a pairing of our legacy of making innovative things, but it's also technology. So those are the 3 focuses there. Now, I mentioned I was going to tell you about maker spaces, 3D modeling, digital fabrication. It's called many things, advanced manufacturing. We have these spaces. Some of them are private. We have them at Harold Washington Library. I did want to show you this. So this is called the Kangaroo Cup, and it is for sale. It's very successful. Thousands of these have been sold. There's an entrepreneur in Chicago named Joe Bourne. His father has Parkinson's disease and has a hard time keeping a mug from spilling over. So his daughter, who I think was like 9 at the time, wanted to design a mug. And she knew that there were tools online, sort of 3D Google SketchUp and those sorts of things, where she could design something and then prototype it using, that machine on the right there. It's called a MakerBot. It's a printer, but it prints using a filament in 3 dimensions for very rapid prototyping. And they finally settled on this design, which doesn't spill over, but also there's all these like side benefits. It holds it off the ground, so this never touches the coaster, so you don't get the little rings and things like that. It's got a lip that's curved in, so that when you walk, it's less likely to spill over. Anyway, they shipped off that prototype to China. Or actually, I think they went over to China, and that's where it's being made. And it's all funded, by the way, through Kickstarter. Again, a sort of distributed platform. Very successful. There are 1,000 other little girls like that who can come up with ideas that would never have been realized without digital fabrication. I want Chicago to be the locus of that. Really great story. So that's the City of Chicago's technology plan. It's at techplan.cityofchicago.org. You can download a printed version and print one off, or you can see it online there. I encourage you to check it out. We need your feedback. That's how we make this better. because this is, all pretty and sort of colorful, but those 28 initiatives will have 28 project plans behind them. So now's the time to get us your feedback so that we can marshal the resources to really get this done. Many thanks. I'm going to leave people out, so I'm not even going to read through this. A lot of people, dozens of organizations helped put this together. Civic Consulting Alliance, I will specifically call out, and Digitas that put together an incredible website that you're about to see. If you're interested in more than just the tech plan, you can check out digital.cityofchicago.org. That's everything that we're doing in this space in data science, innovation, and social media. Thank you very much for your time.